Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while you deepen in your connection with your angels and the magic in your soul. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I'm also someone who listens to sleep podcasts. So this program blends together my waking and sleeping lives in support of your well-being. During the daytime, I facilitate one-on-one angel sessions, which are a beautiful way to help you connect with your divine guidance and bring healing into various areas of your life. I also offer soul mentoring, which is a really powerful way to bring consistent, loving support through a passage of your life. And I also facilitate classes and circles where you can learn and gather with other soul-inspired people. So, whenever you are guided, I invite you to visit my website at illuminatingsouls.com. And you can also register for my daily inspiration email blast, where you'll get an inspiring email from me each weekday. But for now, it is time to rest. And so I invite you to get cozy, snuggle on in, and give yourself permission to release whatever came before this moment so that you can get a good experience of restfulness. We'll be chatting for a little while, and then I will call in the angels who are already here, and then I'm going to read to you a story. I'll be with you for the next hour or so you have plenty of time to drift off. Don't feel pressured. You take your time. Shift your body. Take a deep breath in and release. And the breath is a lovely way of letting your body know that it's okay to begin to let go of the waking world for the next expanse of time. The energy here right now is so beautiful. I am a morning person, which means I'm usually awake by 4 a.m. and I just lay in bed. I don't get up. I'm not terribly productive at those hours, but I also go to bed super early, usually by 8 or 8:30. I'm in bed. The reason I share this with you is it might surprise you to know that I try to record these episodes early in the morning because the world is still. And there's stillness here right now. The sun hasn't yet come up. And the noise around me hasn't yet told me that the world has joined me in this hour yet. And so I want to share this sense of peacefulness with you. You know, one of the things I have been contemplating a lot the past few days is the experience of stillness, especially when the stillness isn't desired. It's one thing to experience stillness when at the deepest part of your soul you can feel that it is profound medicine. Yes, we've all had those moments where an afternoon of stillness is all that we crave. But the thing is sometimes life feels still. We are vibrational beings navigating in a vibrational universe. So we have our own consciousness, and we are a part of the collective consciousness. And it's interesting because right now, to me, life is feeling rather still. And sometimes when these passages come, I go into judgment about myself. I think, what's wrong with me? How many of you have ever asked that about yourself? What's wrong with me? As if whatever we are experiencing is a symptom of some kind of wrongness or imbalance. And I'm not saying that's never the case, but so often, more often than we can imagine, the imbalances that we are feeling do not belong to us. And I mention this because this stillness that I have been feeling, my sense is it belongs to the collective. It's as if we are coming into realignment, that the pieces of the puzzle are blending around. And my sense is grace will follow this period of stillness. So if you are feeling this sense of a pause, there's a beautiful Osho Zen tarot card that is the No Thingness card. It is an all-black card, and to the uninitiated it might seem ominous, but it is not at all a dark card. The No Thingness card represents stillness. It represents the pause between breaths, or that moment of quiet right before a new universe is created. And I feel like for many of us, personally, we are going through this expanse of the no thingness, where the sparks of inspiration are still aligning. We're seeking the answers that, as Rilke says, are not yet ready because we still must live the question. And I don't know about you, but I am someone who loves answers. I love the blueprint. I love to know how to get where I'm going. But sometimes we have to invoke the power of wandering through the stillness, to invoke that part of us that knows how to navigate by the stars as we listen to the wisdom of our soul, as we use these expanses of quiet to rest and reconnect. Because often during these times is when the downloads start coming. The molecules of our beingness start rearranging. The angels help us to open to new opportunities that we might not have even seen before. This morning I was contemplating a time in my life when I had completed the first 2 years at the University of Santa Monica and had gotten my degree in spiritual psychology. It had been a transformational 2 years where I really was rebirthed. I released the false self or the old self and discovered who I was. Everything about my consciousness had changed. And I remember coming home from graduation that had come right after a week-long retreat of sorts in the desert where, again, profound experience. And it was Monday morning, and I still had to go to my job. I got up, I went to walk my dog. My dog was still with me at the time. And I went into the office. The externals of my life were still the same. And it felt confounding to me that I was somehow still in the same life when everything had changed. I mention this because I feel like for many of us, we are in the midst of these kinds of experiences where it feels like within so much has changed. There has been growth and healing, awakening, and sometimes life feels like Groundhog's Day, right? We're living the same rhythm, the same pattern. And this also invokes the stillness we're talking about. So I want to invite you to take a big, deep breath in and release that breath and trust that this place that you are in, that this moment is holy and sacred, that you have not been forgotten. You have not lost your way. Your magic has not lost its potency. There are still wonderful adventures that you will have in the times to come. And for now, we are going to invite the angels in to help bring blessings to you wherever you are in this moment, to help you make peace with what is, and to help you blossom into what might be. So take a deep breath in and out. And I'm going to invite the angels in to join us. Beautiful, precious angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I know you are already here. And I thank you for inviting us into this beautiful sanctuary of light. Angels, I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of divine love, so that everyone who listens to this broadcast, even if it is years from now, will feel this wave of love that you are bringing to us. Angels, I ask that you assist each one of us in coming into brighter alignment with the beauty of our soul, helping to clear away any of the old debris, the old fears or doubts, the stale, outmoded ways of looking at our situations. If you will please just clear these away. gracefully. And in its place, if you will bring forward inspiration and love, helping us attune to divine right flow. And angels, I ask that you assist each one of the beloveds listening to this message in connecting with their innate preciousness in this world. Each person here is so beautiful and precious, and this world is better because you are here. And I ask the angels to help you feel in to the magnitude of this truth. And angels, we ask for sparks of inspiration, that our path is illuminated and our magic is brought online in ways that truly delight our spirit. So, dear ones, just take a deep breath in and out and allow yourself to bathe in the love of your angels. Your angels know the truth of you, and they are here to support you. They are here to help you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. And right now, they are bringing more light to whatever is transpiring in your life right now. They are helping to clear your path. They are helping to bring healing to your heart. And if you have any prayers or intentions that you would like to bring into this moment, just go into your heart and share them silently with the angels. They are attuning to your frequency, and they are receiving what it is that you are sharing with them. And any time you so desire, you can share your prayers with the angels, and they will receive them from you. And they will help in whatever way they are able. And now it's time for you to drift off whenever you are ready. If you haven't already found your comfortable spot, just snuggle in and allow your body to relax, letting your body know it can zone out, because you're going to be going into the mystery of sleep. That beautiful, restorative, replenishing time when our body rests and our conscious mind quiets, and while our greater consciousness gets to soar. It is a beautiful time, even if we are not conscious of it. Much magic and healing and light come during our waking and sleeping hours. And so just focus on your breath, in and out, knowing that you are in the company of your angels who love you so. And while you rest, I'm going to read you a story. So tonight, we are going to return to The Amulet by Edith Nesbitt. In our last episode number 23, we left off and the children were in ancient Babylon. But if you haven't been keeping up with the story, which is entirely likely because my hope is you're drifting off before we get too far into the story, I will catch you up. So, there are 4 children: Jane, Robert, Cyril, and Anthea. And a few books ago, they came across a sand fairy called the Psammead, who is as ancient as the world, and who has the ability to grant wishes. And during their first adventure together, the children would ask for a wish, and it would always come out wrong. So they have promised the Psammead that they will no longer ask for wishes. But in this book, they find themselves in a situation where they would like to empower some more magic. Their father is working in a faraway land, and their mother is sick and has gone to recuperate in a better climate, and she has brought their baby brother, who they call the Lamb. And so the Psammead tells them about the amulet, which it spied in a store in London. So the children go to get the amulet, but discover they only have half the amulet, which means it only has half power. And so they're on an adventure to try to find the other half of the amulet. While their parents are away, they are staying with old nurse in her boarding house. She has taken care of them for a long time. And there also is a learned scholar who is a boarder there who helps them identify the amulet. And so they have determined they have to travel back in time to find the other half of the amulet. In the part of the story we're picking up, they are in ancient Babylon. They have arrived at the gates of the city and been admitted, and one of the guards has put them in the care of his wife, who helped them prepare for an audience with the queen. But when it got time to go to see the queen, the Psammead and the youngest sibling, Jane, decided they didn't want to go see the queen and they would rather go back with the nice lady to her house while the others saw the queen. So they've been separated. Jane has half the amulet around her neck, and the other 3 children are about to have an audience with the queen. This is where we pick up our story. "We want to see the queen," said Cyril. "We come from the far empire where the sun never sets." A murmur of surprise and a thrill of excitement ran through the crowd. The door porter spoke to a man. He spoke to someone else. There was a whispering, waiting, pause. Then a big man with a cleanly shaven face beckoned them from the top of a flight of red marble steps. They went up, the boots of Robert clattering more than usual because he was so nervous. A door swung open. A curtain was drawn back. A double line of bowing forms in gorgeous clothing formed a lane that led to the steps of the throne. And as the children advanced hurriedly, there from the throne came a voice, very sweet and kind. 3 children from the land where the sun never sets. Let them draw hither without fear." In another minute, they were kneeling at the throne's foot, saying, "O Queen, live forever," exactly as the woman had taught them. And a splendid dream lady, all gold and silver and jewels and snowy drift of veils, was raising Anthea and saying, "Don't be frightened. I really am so glad you came. The land where the sun never sets. I am delighted to see you. I was getting quite too dreadfully bored for anything." And behind Anthea, the kneeling Cyril whispered in the ears of the respectful Robert, "Pops, don't say anything to Panther. It's no use upsetting her. But we didn't ask for Jane's address, and the Psammead is with her." "Well," whispered Robert, "the charm can bring them to us at any moment. It said so." "Oh yes," whispered Cyril in miserable derision. "We're all right, of course. So we are. Oh yes, if only we'd got the charm." Then Robert saw, and he murmured, "Crikey," at the foot of the throne of Babylon, while Cyril hoarsely whispered the plain English fact, "Jane's got the charm around her neck, you silly cuckoo." "Crikey," Robert repeated in heartbroken undertones. Chapter 7. The deepest dungeon below the castle moat. The Queen threw 3 of the red and gold embroidered cushions off the throne onto the marble steps that led up to it. "Just make yourselves comfortable there," she said. "I'm simply dying to talk to you and to hear all about your wonderful country and how you got here and everything. But I have to do justice every morning. Such a bore, isn't it? Do you do justice in your own country?" "No," said Cyril. "At least, of course, we try to, but not in this public sort of way, only in private." "Ah, yes," said the Queen. "I should much prefer a private audience myself, much easier to manage. But public opinion has to be considered. Doing justice is very hard work, even when you're brought up to do it." "We don't do justice, but we have to do scales, Jane and me," said Anthea. 20 minutes a day. It's simply horrid." "What are scales?" asked the Queen, "and what is Jane?" "Jane is my little sister. One of the guards at the gate's wife is taking care of her. And scales are music." "I never heard of the instrument," said the Queen. "Do you sing?" "Oh yes, we can sing in parts," said Anthea. "That is magic," said the Queen. "How many parts are each of you cut into before you do it?" "We aren't cut at all," said Robert hastily. "We couldn't sing if we were. We'll show you afterwards." "So you shall. And now sit quiet like dear children and hear me do justice. The way I do it has always been admired. I oughtn't to say that, ought I? Sounds so conceited. But I don't mind with you, dears. Somehow I feel as though I'd known you quite a long time already." The Queen settled herself on the throne and made a signal to her attendants. The children, whispering together among the cushions on the steps of the throne, decided that she was very beautiful and very kind, but perhaps just the least bit flighty. The first person who came to ask for justice was a woman whose brother had taken the money the father had left for her. The brother said it was the uncle who had the money. There was a good deal of talk, and the children were growing rather bored, when the Queen suddenly clapped her hands and said, "Put both the men in prison till one of them owns up that the other is innocent." "But suppose they both did it," Cyril could not help interrupting. "Then prison's the best place for them," said the Queen. "But suppose neither did it?" "That's impossible," said the Queen. "A thing's not done unless someone does it, and you mustn't interrupt." Then came a woman in tears with a torn veil and real ashes on her head, At least Anthea thought so, but it may have been only road dust. She complained that her husband was in prison. "What for?" said the queen. "They said it was for speaking evil of your majesty," said the woman, "but it wasn't. Someone had a spite against him, that's what it was." "How do you know he hadn't spoken evil of me?" said the queen. "No one could," said the woman simply, "when they'd once seen your beautiful face." "Let the man out," said the queen, smiling. "Next case." The next case was that of a boy who had stolen a fox. "Like the Spartan boy," whispered Robert. But the queen ruled that nobody could have any possible reason for owning a fox, and still less for stealing one, and that she did not believe that there were any foxes in Babylon. She, at any rate, had never seen one, so the boy was released. The people came to the queen about all sorts of family quarrels and neighborly misunderstandings, from a fight between brothers over the division of an inheritance, to the dishonest and unfriendly conduct of a woman who had borrowed a cooking pot at the last New Year's festival and not returned it yet. And the queen decided everything, very, very decidedly indeed. At last she clapped her hands quite suddenly and with extreme loudness and said, "The audience is over for today." Everyone said, "May the queen live forever," and went out. And the children were left alone in the justice hall with the queen of Babylon and her ladies. "There," said the queen with a long sigh of relief. "That's over. I couldn't have done another stitch of justice if you offered me the crown of Egypt. Now come into the garden and we'll have a nice, long, cozy talk." She led them through long, narrow corridors, whose walls they somehow felt were very, very thick, into a sort of garden courtyard. There were thick shrubs closely planted, and roses were trained over trellises, and made a pleasant shade indeed. Indeed, for already the sun was as hot as it is in England in August at the seaside. Servants spread cushions on low marble terrace, and a big man with a smooth face served cool drink in cups of gold studded with beryls. He drank a little from the queen's cup before handing it to her. "That's a rather nasty trick," whispered Robert, who had been carefully taught never to drink out of one of the nice shiny metal cups that are chained to the London drinking fountains without rinsing it out thoroughly. The queen overheard him. "Not at all," she said. "Riddie Marduk is very clean man, and one has to have someone as a taster, you know, because of poison." The word made the children feel rather creepy, but the man had tasted all the cups, so they felt pretty safe. The drink was delicious, very cold and tasting like lemonade and partly like penny ice. "Leave us," said the queen, and all the court ladies in their beautiful many-folded, many-colored fringed dresses filed out slowly, and the children were left alone with the queen. "Now," she said, "tell me all about yourselves." They looked at each other. "You, Bobs," said Cyril. "No, Anthea," said Robert. "No, you, Cyril," said Anthea. "Don't you remember how pleased the Queen of India was when you told her all about us?" Cyril muttered that it was all very well, and so it was. For when he had told the tale of the phoenix and the carpet to the queen, it had been only the truth, and all the truth that he had to tell. But now it was not easy to tell a convincing story without mentioning the amulet, which of course it wouldn't have done to mention, and without owning that they were really living in London about 2,500 years later than the time they were taking in. Cyril took refuge in the tale of the Psammead and its wonderful power of making wishes come true. The children had never been able to tell anyone before, and Cyril was surprised to find that the spell which kept them silent in London did not work here. Something to do with our being in the past, I suppose, he said to himself. This is most interesting, said the Queen. We must have this Psammead for the banquet tonight. Its performances will be one of the most popular turns in the whole program. Where is it? And Thea explained that they did not know, also why it was that they did not know. Oh, that's quite simple, said the Queen, and everyone breathed a deep sigh of relief as she said it. Ritti Marduk shall run down to the gates and find out which guard your sister went home with. Might he, and Thea's voice was tremulous, would he interfere with his meal times or anything like that if he went now? Of course he shall go now. He may think himself lucky if he gets his meals at any time, said the Queen heartily and clapped her hands. May I send a letter? Asked Cyril, pulling out a red-backed penny account book and feeling in his pockets for a stump of pencil that he knew was in one of them. By all means, I'll call my scribe. Oh, I can scribe right enough, thanks, said Cyril, finding the pencil and licking its point. He even had to bite the wood a little, for it was very blunt. Oh, you clever, clever boy, said the Queen. Do let me watch you do it. Cyril wrote on a leaf of the book. It was of rough, woolly paper, with hairs that stuck out, and would have gotten in his pen if he had been using one, and ruled for accounts. Hide it most carefully before you come here, he wrote, and don't mention it and destroy this letter. Everything is going A1. The Queen is a fair treat. There's nothing to be afraid of. What curious characters and what a strange flat surface, said the Queen. What have you inscribed? I've scribed, replied Cyril cautiously, that you are fair and like a festival, and that she need not be afraid, and that she is to come at once. Ritti Marduk, who had come in and had stood waiting while Cyril wrote, his Babylonish eyes nearly starting out of his Babylonish head, now took the letter with some reluctance. O Queen, live forever. Is it a charm? He timidly asked. A strong charm, most great lady? Yes, said Robert unexpectedly. It is a charm, but it won't hurt anyone until you've given it to Jane, and then she'll destroy it so that it can't hurt anyone. It is most awful strong as peppermint, he ended abruptly. I know not the god, said Ritti Marduk, bending timorously. She'll tear it up directly when she gets it, said Robert. That'll end the charm. You needn't be afraid if you go now. Ritti Marduk went, seeming only partly satisfied, and then the Queen began to admire the penny account book and the bit of pencil in so marked and significant a way that Cyril felt he could not do less than press them upon her as a gift. She ruffled the leaves delightedly. What a wonderful substance, she said. And with this style you make charms? Make a charm for me. Do you know, her voice sank into the whisper, the names of the great ones of your own far country? Rather, said Cyril, and hastily wrote the names of Alfred the Great, Shakespeare, Nelson, Gordon, Mr. Rudyard Kipling, and Mr. Sherlock Holmes, while the Queen watched him with abated breath, as Anthea said afterwards. She took the book and hid it reverently among the bright folds of her gown. You shall teach me later to say their names, she said, and the names of their ministers. Perhaps the great Nisroch is one of them. I don't think so, said Cyril. Mr. Campbell Bannerman's prime minister, and Mr. Burns a minister, and so is the Archbishop of Canterbury, I think, but I am not sure, and Dr. Parker was one, I know, and no more, said the Queen, putting her hands to her ears. My head's going round with all those great names. You shall teach me to them later, because, of course, you'll make us a nice long visit now that you have come, won't you? Now tell me, but no, I'm quite tired out with your being so clever. Besides, I'm sure you'd like me to tell you something, wouldn't you? Yes, said Anthea. I want to know how is it that the king has gone. Excuse me, but you should say the king, may he live forever, said the queen gently. I beg your pardon, Anthea hastened to say. The king, may he live forever, has gone to fetch home his 14th wife. I don't think even Bluebeard has had as many as that. And besides, he hasn't killed you at any rate. The queen looked bewildered. She means, explained Robert, that English kings only have one wife at least. Henry VIII had 7 or 8, but not all at once. In our country, said the queen scornfully, a king would not reign a day who had only one wife. No one would respect him, and quite right too. Then all the other 13 are alive, asked Anthea. Of course they are, poor mean-spirited things. I don't associate with them, of course. I am the queen, and they're only wives. I see, said Anthea, gasping. But oh, my dears, the queen went on, such a to-do there has never been about this last wife. You never did. It really was too funny. We wanted an Egyptian princess. The king, may he live forever, has got a wife from most of the important nations, and he had set his heart on an Egyptian one to complete his collection. Well, of course, to begin with, we sent a handsome present of gold. The Egyptian king sent back some horses, quite a few. He's fearfully stingy. And he said he liked the gold very much, but what they were really short of was lapis lazuli, so of course we sent him some. But by that time he'd begun to use the gold to cover the beams of the roof of the temple of the sun god, and he had it nearly enough to finish the job, so we sent some more. And so it went on and on for years. You see, each journey takes at least 6 months, and at last we asked the hand of his daughter in marriage. Yes, and then, said Anthea, who wanted to get to the princess part of the story. Well then, said the queen, when he'd gotten everything out of us that he could, and only given the meanest presents in return, he sent to say he would esteem the honor of an alliance very highly, only unfortunately he hadn't any daughter, but he hoped one would be born soon, and if so, she should certainly be reserved for the king of Babylon. What a trick, said Cyril. Yes, wasn't it? So then we said his sister would do. And then there were more gifts and more journeys, and now at last the tiresome black-haired thing is coming. And the king, may he live forever, has gone 7 days' journey to meet her at Carchemish. And he's gone in his best chariot, the one inlaid with lapis lazuli and gold, with the gold-plated wheels and the onyx-studded hubs. Much too great an honor, in my opinion. She'll be here tonight. There'll be a grand banquet to celebrate her arrival. She won't be present, of course. She'll be having her baths and her anointings and all that sort of things. We always clean our foreign brides very carefully. It takes 2 or 3 weeks. Now it's dinner time, and you shall eat with me, for I can see that you are of a high rank. She led them into a dark, cool hall with many cushions on the floor. On these they sat at low tables, beautiful tables of smooth blue stone mounted in gold. On these golden trays were placed, but there were no knives or forks or spoons. The children expected the queen to call for them, but no, she just ate with her fingers. And as the first dish was a great tray of boiled corn and meat and raisins, all mixed together, it was found difficult to follow her example with anything like what we are used to thinking of as good table manners. There were stewed quinces afterwards, and dates and syrup, and thick yellowy cream. It was the kind of dinner you hardly ever get in Fitzroy Street. After dinner, everybody went to sleep, even the children. The queen awoke with a start. Good gracious, she cried. What a time we've slept. I must rush off and dress for the banquet. I shan't have much more time. Hasn't Ritti Marduk gotten back with our sister and the Psammead yet? Anthea asked. I quite forgot to ask, I'm sorry, said the queen. And of course they wouldn't announce her unless I told them to, except during justice hours. I expect she's waiting outside, I'll see. Ritti Marduk came in a moment later. I regret, he said, that I have been unable to find your sister. The beast she bears with her in a basket has bitten a child of the guard, and your sister and the beast set out to come to you. The police say they have a clue. No doubt we shall have news of her in a few weeks. He bowed and withdrew. The horror of this threefold loss, Jane, the Psammead, and the amulet, gave the children something to talk about while the queen was dressing. I shall not report their conversation. It was very gloomy. Everyone repeated himself several times, and the discussion ended in each of them blaming the other two for having let Jane go. You know the sort of talk it was, don't you? At last Cyril said, After all, she's with the Psammead, so she's all right. The Psammead is jolly careful of itself too, and it isn't as if we were in any danger. Let's try to buck up and enjoy the banquet. They did enjoy the banquet. They had a beautiful bath, which was delicious, including their hair. Then they dressed again and were presented to the king, who was most affable. The banquet was long. There were all sorts of nice things to eat, and everybody seemed to eat and drink a good deal. Everyone lay on cushions and couches, ladies on one side and the gentlemen on the other. And after the eating was done, each lady went and sat by some gentleman who seemed to be her sweetheart or her husband, for they were very affectionate to each other. The court dresses had gold threads woven in them, very bright and beautiful. The middle of the room was left clear, and different people came and did amusing things. There were conjurers and jugglers and snake charmers, which last Anthea did not like at all. When it got dark, torches were lighted. Cedar splinters dipped in oil blazed in copper dishes set high on poles. Then there was a dancer who hardly danced at all, only just struck attitudes. She had hardly any clothes and was not at all pretty. The children were rather bored by her, but everyone else was delighted, including the king. By the beard of Nimrod, he cried, ask what you like, girl, and you shall have it. I want nothing, said the dancer. The honor of having pleased the king, may he live forever, is reward enough for me. And the king was so pleased with this modest and sensible reply that he gave her the gold collar off his own neck. I say, said Cyril, awed by the magnificence of the gift. It's all right, whispered the queen. It's not his best collar by any means. We always keep a stock of cheap jewelry for these occasions. And now you promised to sing us something. Would you like my minstrels to accompany you? No, thank you, said Anthea quickly. The minstrels had been playing off and on all the time, and their music reminded Anthea of the band she and the others had once had on the 5th of November, with penny horns, a tin whistle, a tea tray, the tongs, a policeman's rattle, and a toy drum. They had enjoyed this band very much at the time, but it was quite different when someone else was making the same kind of music. Anthea understood now that Father had not really been heartless and unreasonable when he had told them to stop that infuriating din. What shall we sing? Cyril was asking. Sweet and low, suggested Anthea. Too soft. I vote for Who Will O'er the Downs, Now and Then. Now then. 1, 2, 3. And the children sang. Jane, the alto, was missing, and Robert, unlike the mother of the lady in the song, could never keep the key. But the song, even so, was sufficiently unlike anything any of them had ever heard to rouse the Babylonian court to the wildest enthusiasm. "More, more," cried the king. "By my beard, this savage music is a new thing. Sing again." And so they sang. Shouts of applause greeted the end of the verse, and the king would not be satisfied till they had sung all their part songs. They only knew 3 twice over, and ended up with Men of Harlech in unison. Then the king stood up in his royal robes, with his high narrow crown on his head, and shouted, "By the beak of Nisroch, ask what you will, strangers from the land where the sun never sets." "We ought to say it's enough honor, like the dancer did," whispered Anthea. "No, let's ask for it," said Robert. No, I'm sure the others' manners," said Anthea. But Robert, who was excited by the music and the flaring torches and the applause and the opportunity, spoke up before the others could stop him. "Give us half of the amulet that has on it the name of Ur-Hakau-Secha," he said, adding as an afterthought, "O King, live forever." As he spoke the great name, those in the pillared halls fell on their faces and laid still. All but the queen, who crouched amid her cushions, with her head in her hands, and the king, who stood upright, perfectly still, like the statue of a king in stone. It was only for a moment, though. Then his great voice thundered out, "Guard! Seize them!" Instantly, from nowhere as it seemed, sprang 8 soldiers in bright armor inlaid with gold and tunics of red and white. Very splendid they were, and very alarming. "Impious and sacrilegious wretches," shouted the king, "to the dungeons with them. We will find a way tomorrow to make them speak, for without doubt they can tell us where to find the lost half of it." A wall of scarlet and white and steel and gold closed around the children and hurried them away among the many pillars of the great hall. As they went, they heard the voices of the courtiers loud in horror. "You've done it this time," said Cyril with extreme bitterness. "Oh, it will come right. It must. It always does," said Anthea desperately. They could not see where they were going, because the guards surrounded them so closely, but the ground under their feet, smooth marble at first, grew rougher like stone. Then it was like loose earth and sand, and they felt the night air, and then there was more stone and steps down. "It is my belief that we really are going to the deepest dungeon below the castle moat at this time," said Cyril. And they were. At least it was not below a moat, but below the river Euphrates, which was just as bad, if not worse. And a most unpleasant place it was. Dark, very, very damp, and with an odd musty smell rather like the shells of oysters. There was a torch, that is to say, a copper basket on a high stick with oiled wood burning in it. By its light the children saw that the walls were green, and that trickles of water ran down them and dripped from the roof. There were things on the floor that looked like newts, and the dark corners, creepy, shining things moved sluggishly, uneasily. Robert's heart sank right into those really reliable boots of his. Anthea and Cyril each had private struggle with that insane disagreeableness which is part of us all, and which is sometimes called the old Adam. And both were victors. Neither of them said to Robert, and both tried hard not to even think it, "This is your doing." Anthea had the additional temptation to add, "I told you so," and she resisted it successfully. "Sacrilege and impious cheek," said the captain of the guard, "to be kept during the king's pleasure. I expect he means to get some pleasure out of them tomorrow." "Poor little kids," said the prison guard. "Oh, yes," said the captain. "I've got kids of my own, too. but it doesn't do to let domestic sentiment interfere with one's public duties. Good night." The soldiers tramped heavily off in their white and red and steel and gold. The prison guard, with a bunch of big keys in his hand, stood looking pityingly at the children. He shook his head twice and went out. "Courage," said Anthea. "I know it will really be all right. It's only a dream, really, you know. It must be. I don't believe about time being only something or other as we thought. It is a dream, and we're bound to wake up all right and safe." Said Cyril bitterly. And Robert suddenly said, "It's all my doing, it really is," said Robert. "It's all right, Bob's old man," said Cyril, and Anthea got hold of Robert's hand and squeezed it. The prison guard came back with a platter of hard, flat cakes made of coarse grain, very different from the cream and juicy date feasts of the palace, also a pitcher of water. "There," he said. "Oh, thank you so very much. You are so very kind," said Anthea feverishly. "Go to sleep," said the prison guard, pointing to a heap of straw in the corner. "Tomorrow comes soon enough." "Oh, dear Mr. Prison Guard," said Anthea, "whatever will they do to us tomorrow?" "They'll try to make you tell things," said the prison guard grimly. "And my advice is if you've got nothing to tell, make up something. Then perhaps they'll send you to the northern nations." "Good night." "Good night," said the three trembling voices, which their owner strove in vain to render firm. Then he went out, and the three were left alone in the damp, dim vault. And I have to say that even though we're going to complete the story at this point, that the children make it out okay, right? You know that I would never read you a story where things ended badly. So the children do wind up making it out of the dungeon. Of course they do. And they are reunited with Jane and the Psammead. And they make it back home. I may read some of that to you in another episode, but I didn't want to leave you hanging. Because this is magic the way we want it to be. So the children do get to reunite with their sister and the Psammead. And they make it back to London in their time. But I just think these stories are so enchanting, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you. For now, I invite you to have a good night's rest, or a good day's rest whenever it is that you are sleeping. Let the angels wash the love all over you, filling the room you are in with soft pink light. And they'll watch over you as you sleep. So I wish you sweet dreams, and we'll connect again soon. Thank you. Good night.